Hey cool kids, for this month's sketchbook tour I decided to do something a little different, do a sort of digital sketchbook tour. Now a little backstory, for the past couple of years I've been doing this challenge called the April Drawing Challenge, which is essentially just where you draw a picture every day in April. And so we're going to go over some of those pictures from the past couple of years and from this year, because I actually did every single day for the first time ever this year. And we're going to head over to my art blog, marrowdraws.tumblr.com. Now, I realize the fact that I post all these to my art blog might make this a little less exciting than a normal sketchbook tour, because with other sketchbook tours, it's traditional art that no one's ever seen. But you know what? No one really follows my art blog, so most people haven't really seen this either. So to begin with, we have this beautiful picture. This was back in 2015 when I first started doing the challenge. I got an anon asking if I could draw a bunny on a motorcycle smoking a cigar, and because I'm always eager to please, I drew a bunny on a motorcycle smoking a cigar. And like, look at that really sketchy line work and like the brown line art, and just a lot going on with this picture. I actually do genuinely really like how the motorcycle turned out. I think I used a buttload of references for that. Starting off strong, and then already by day 2, I couldn't finish a full artwork, so I was like, here's just a work in progress, because I'm too busy. And it's like, what were you busy doing, Melody? You didn't even have a job. But then the next day, I finished it. This is an OC Mashuri, who I think I didn't really use after that April. Like, I had her for a brief amount of time, and then I just sort of stopped working on the story I'd created her for. But I actually genuinely really like how the face in this picture turned out, but just like the leg pose, I don't know what's going on with her legs here. Like, there are too many legs. What leg is which, and why is it twisting like this, and how, and I don't know. Each day they had themes, and I believe the theme for this day was redraw a picture. So we have this old picture, which I think you guys have seen in a past sketchbook tour. Oh, I even wrote a little caption at the bottom, like criticizing my younger self for drawing on the back of the page, because we just have this creepy head looming in the back here. Then I redrew it again, and this redrawing, I wasn't actually super happy with it, but, you know, I had to post every day, so I figured I'd post it anyway. And, like, again, this arm, same thing with Mashuri's leg. What's going on with this arm pose, Melody? What were you trying to accomplish? And then coming at it with some fan art of Peridot. Now, fun fact, for this picture, this background here, I wanted to have her in a warp, but I couldn't figure out how to draw the background myself, so I literally just took a bunch of, like, screenshots of, like, warp scenes from Steven Universe and pasted those together and awkwardly tried to slap them together to make a background. I used to use this, like, really sketchy line art look because I thought it would make my art look cooler and more interesting, but, like, it looks so messy. The theme was centaurs, and I didn't want to draw like a normal fantasy centaur because I felt like that'd be a little boring. Wasn't really feeling that, so I was like, what would a modern day centaur look like? So this is my modern day business centaur, and fun fact, I started coloring this picture and just never finished it because I didn't want to. And then there was drawing with your non-dominant hand, and as you can see, I am just clearly incredibly ambidextrous. Look how smooth this line work is. Although I say that, it's about as smooth as any of the line work I did back in 2015. And then we have my very first sketch of Andesine, which, as you can see, I kind of ended up liking her as a character a bit, I guess. But I was trying to work out just sort of a body shape and everything. Again, you had to post every day in April, and I couldn't finish this picture, so I was like, let's just post a rough sketch. This is my gemstone, guys. But then I made a slightly cleaner version. Backstory about the andesite stone. Originally, it was believed to not be a real gemstone because geologists inspecting it found traces of copper in it, so that meant that copper was probably artificially inserted in it to give it its color, and it was a different type of stone. But then after everyone had already been like, yeah, andesine's not a real stone, they found like a big deposit of andesine that had no copper traces in it. And so I decided to make a gemstone sort of based around that backstory. So Andy's a bit of a scam artist. And then I had one of those days where my tablet and my side just weren't feeling it. Didn't really want to get along, and the pressure sensitivity wasn't working, so I decided to do an MS Paint drawing. I used to do a lot of these on this forum on Gaia where you draw someone else's avatar in MS Paint. The theme for this day was backgrounds, and so I tried doing a background in MS Paint really messily. Oh man, we have some early art of Tosh. I think the very first drawing I'd done of Tosh was March before this April. So I wasn't really sure how I wanted her character design to go, and the theme of the day was character expression, so I thought it'd be a cool day to sort of flesh out her design a little more. And I wasn't super happy with a lot of these expressions. That's sort of one of the downsides of trying to draw something super quickly, is that a lot of it comes out a little derpy. I did really like this one though. Aw, and then my very first cheat day where I just didn't want to draw something that day. And again, I don't know what I had going on in 2015 that was so important that I couldn't do like a 20-minute drawing, but I was like, no, I'm too busy, so here's some art I did a couple days ago. So we have this one, which I did in MS Paint. Again, since I'd done a background on the last one, I wanted to try doing a background again. And remember, this picture gave me so much trouble because like I was using this method where you do sort of these artificial layers in MS Paint, which involves a lot of transparent selections. I messed up when I was doing the detail work on her dress, and so I had to like go back and try to repaint and redraw the line art, and it just took way longer than it was supposed to. And I had plans to do a more ambitious background, but by the time I got to that point, I was just like, I don't care anymore. Just take your art and don't talk to me again. And then we have this one, which I actually still to this day really like. I was trying to do sort of a forced perspective type look, so she's flying up, which is why her legs are so tiny. And I realize it's not entirely correct, and her wings are also just so flimsy. What's going on with those wings? But I do like this picture. And then another work in progress because I was so busy probably watching anime. But then that work in progress came in together into what is probably still one of my favorite paintings I've done to this day. It's this one, and I was redrawing this first image here, which, a little backstory behind this, back in the day I was in the Yogscast fandom, and there was this one artist named Sins, and they drew one of the characters from the Yogscast, Rithian, in a way that made him always look sort of like an umbrella, and so it became this inside joke in the fandom that Rithian was an umbrella. There was this umbrella Rithian meme going on, and so I drew this first image from that meme, and it was the first image that this girl Zoe ever reblogged from me, and she said it was perfect, and my heart was just so happy. And then one of the other Yogscast members tweeted this picture out, and Rithian saw it, and he said it was the worst thing he'd ever seen, and it just made me so much more happy. And so I decided to redraw that again, because this one was drawn very quickly for the sake of memes, and so I actually spent my time on this one. I really love how the background in this came out, and I don't know, it's just one of my favorite pictures. And look at that, another work in progress, which I remember was actually because this picture was giving me so much trouble. Like, I don't even remember why, but Sai just kept crashing while I was trying to work on this. And then I finished it into what is another one of my favorite pictures. I don't really like her pose. Like, I'd love to redraw this at some point, but it was my first time really playing around with a smoother line art because, as you saw before, I was really into super sketchy line art look, and I wanted to try something a little smoother and cleaner. And on top of that, I really love how the coloring on this came out, just because there were a lot of different super colorful light sources to play with. And now we make it into year 2. So this was last year, 2016, and so you'll notice I started on day 2. This is the 1 year out of the 3 years I've done it that I actually put a day on my art, which I wish I'd done it this year or 2015, but whatever. But anyways, I started on day 2 because I actually planned on not doing April drawing in 2016 just because it was right after I'd gotten my job and I was just so busy. The theme for day 2 was drawing your favorite character, and I hadn't drawn any Blackrock fan art in ages, and so I was like, I want an excuse to draw Zoe. So I drew Zoe, and by day 3, I was already like, I don't know if I want to do this, it's too much work. And so I put this challenge off until like near the end of the day, but it was imitation, and so I tried to imitate the art of Takeshi Obata, who's been one of my biggest art inspirations ever since I was like a middle schooler. And so I wanted to try drawing some art from Death Note in particular. I think if I remember correctly, I started here and then I sort of worked my way around the page. This one was the last one I did, and it's probably my favorite one out of all of these. Then day 4's theme was a dream, and I have a lot of weird nightmares. Most of them involve either bugs, mermaids, or photography, and I'm not sure why that's the #1 place my brain goes when it's like, let's make something scary for Melody to think of while she's sleeping, but it is. And so this dream in particular was about both mermaids and photography. I wanted to draw sort of like this final scene, I guess, of that dream. And I tried to keep it very loose, both in the character design and in the pose of it, and I really like how this entire image is oriented. I tried to keep the mermaid having a very supernatural feel, just to sort of add to that creepy aesthetic. And then I wanted the girl character in this image not to look entirely humanoid, so that's why I made her purple. Then day 5 was comfort, and my number one comfort at the time was taking bubble baths, but I also have a very itty bitty tiny bathtub, and so whenever I go to take a bubble bath, I'm like super crunched up, and it's really not as comforting as it should be. And then for day 6, I drew a picture of Tosh, because she's my go-to when I need something to draw. I saw this cool dress on one of the Edwardian blogs I follow, and I wanted to draw Tosh in it. Oh, and then this makes me happy. This is like some of my very first drawings. My redesign of Lou, because I'd drawn a couple pictures of him before, but this was my first time drawing him sort of as how I wanted him to look. So this is Louis Kaluha, one of my favorite OCs. I struggled a lot with this. I tried using some memes at first to sort of work out his face, but again, I didn't really know how I wanted his face to look, so I went for a more loose method where I basically just like pulled out a block of color and then sort of did some line art over top of that and then refined the coloring a little bit, which I found is probably one of the easier methods personally for me. Then if I remember correctly, this was actually a redrawing of a daily doodle I'd done that day, because this was 2016, so it was the year I did all of those traditional daily doodles, and I'd drawn an eye witch either the night before or the morning of. And so I was like, let's draw a better eye witch. That doesn't look bad. Then another draw this again meme, starting off with this beautiful work of art. And for this picture, I drew it when I was, I think, 10 or 12, somewhere in that area, and I was so proud of it. Like, you don't understand. I literally, that night, I started crying because I was like, this is the best thing I've ever drawn. This is going to be my magnus opus. This is going to hang in museums. It's beautiful. Like, I was just so obsessed with this picture for the longest time. And this first picture, it took me about 2 hours to do. I wish I was kidding. And then for the other picture, when I redrew it about 10 years later, I drew the initial sketch for this in about 5 minutes. I did the line art for this in 10 minutes or so, and the coloring in 30 minutes, and it's nowhere near my best work, even at the time, but it's still light years better than my magnus opus, which never think you're done improving, kids. I considered drawing a mermaid, but I figured since I'd already drawn a mermaid a couple days back, I'd just click on this one website. It's called like Mythical Creatures, a Mythical Creatures list, and I just picked the most random one I could find, and it ended up being the Hodag, and it's a real beaut of a creature. And this theme was observational drawing. I wasn't sure if I wanted to follow the theme this day. I think I had originally planned to do something else, but then that had fallen through, so I was like, let's just follow the theme. So I drew my dresser, and I was okay with how it looked. I was like, there's not enough punch to it. Let's throw some color on. And then I just hated how the color looked. I think this day, it was one of my weekends, so I had a lot of free time, and so I did something in MS Paint, and I honestly love how this line art turned out. Like, and I threw some color on it, and I'm not quite as happy with the color as I am with the liner, but it's still fun. This picture, the theme of the day was character rotation, and I tried to do a full body picture of her, but at the same time, the day that I did this, I also had like a family dinner with like my cousin and my grandma and all that, so I tried to pump this all out super quickly. So like the first picture, I'm okay with it. I like how it turned out. It's not perfect, but you know, it's what I wanted it to be. And then the side view, just side views aren't my strong point, you can tell. And the back view, I literally just took the first picture, I flipped it around, retraced it, and tried drawing it again, and it's something. And we're coming up to day 16, which was another one of those days where I just couldn't finish the pictures, so I just pushed to the line art and said, this is good enough, right? And I had actually planned to finish that sketch I'd done before, for day 17, which was finish what you started, but then I remembered I have this painting that I've been working on since 2015, and it's a painting of Tosh and Lex. This is what I had when I went into it, and I'd spent so long on the background for this painting that by the time I was completely done with the background, I pretty much entirely changed how Lex's character design looked, so I really wasn't sure if I wanted to finish the painting, but I decided I'd put more work into it. So this was some of the work I'd done to redo it. It's not super noticeable, but like Tosh in particular, I did a lot more rendering on. And same with Lex. I'm still not sure if I'm ever going to finish this painting, partially again because Lex's character design has changed like such a significant amount, but also because there's so many layers in it by this point that whenever I open up, there's always that risk that side might just sort of crash and not open it up. And then day 18 was just a really quick one because I don't think I had a lot of time to do anything complicated this day. I wanted to play around with lighting a bit with this, and so I gave sort of this dramatic, like, glow lighting from the little dragon's fire, and the theme of the day was she woke up that morning. Something unusual lay on her pillow. And I thought about doing, like, a key or, like, something dramatic, and then I was like, you want to know what? What about dragons? Let's do dragons. Then I finished the picture of Hallie and Minnie. Yay! And it was my first time doing the method of shading that I actually use a lot now, where I'll do all the flat colors on one layer and then go over on another layer and use multiply to do all the shading. And I wasn't really sure what I was doing, and so it was just such a pain in the butt to do for this picture, and that's part of why the shading on this picture is kind of eh. And then, so this is day 22, and this one is... Oh, what day would it be? This was day 18, so this was day 19. So I missed about 3 days. I don't know why. Probably had something going on. But I drew a picture of Penny to make up for it, because if you don't know, Penny is my #1 wife. Love her so much, from Stardew Valley. And this picture got 96 notes, so outside of the Zoe picture I did at the start of the month, I think it's the most notes for any of the April drawings. And confession time, I don't actually really like this picture. Like, it's not one of my favorites, and I'd done a different picture of Penny back in March of this year, and it didn't get as many notes. I was like, why this one? Why Tumblr? And then again, I was busy, so I was like, let's just draw something super quick. And I just drew this picture super quick. I think I literally just, like, threw color at a canvas, threw on some line art to make it look like shapes, and called it an art. And it got like 7 notes. And I was like, okay, I can just do dumb doodles and it's gonna get notes. And then I did this picture, which I actually spent a really long time on for this one. It was my first time trying to do that method I did for my Poppy video last week, where you do the shading in black and white and then colors on a different layer, all that. But this was back when I was doing it completely wrong, so I did the colors on an overlay layer and then the shading just on a regular layer instead of putting the shading on a multiply layer. I talked about all this in last week's video. And so I struggled a lot to get the color of her hair and skin right, like that's why she's blue and pink, but I really like this picture, and I was like, well, since the picture from yesterday got 7 notes, this one should surely get more, because this one took me more effort, and it's a full fleshed out picture, and it only got 4 notes. I was like, why don't you guys love me? And then this picture, again, like with the picture from day 23, was just, let's just throw things at a canvas, see what works out. And this wasn't the initial picture I planned. I did this line art, and the first shading I did, I wanted to play around with rim lighting, and so I did this, and I didn't really like how it turned out, so I was like, let's just make it super bright and colorful, so I was like, I can draw whatever, and it'll get notes. And then this one only got 1 note, and I was like, I like this one better than yesterday's, but whatever. This one was the sort of fun method. I'd done this painting of the ocean at first, and I didn't like how it turned out, so I sort of tweaked the colors on it so it was more abstract and vibrant, and then I drew a girl underneath, and I set the ocean layer to, that way it was just where I drawn the girl, and then I went over with some black and some white to add more texture and shading. It's just a really quick way to make your quick doodles look a little more complicated or a little more interesting. And space coat, because I wanted to draw space. And then another Tosh, which again, I did this really quickly because I didn't have a lot of time to do it, and so I don't like how most of these turned out. I think Baby Tosh is the only one that I actually really like from this lineup. And then for the last day, it was just do whatever theme you want, and one of the themes that I had missed that month was draw from a shape, and so I tried doing a bunch of bears, and I had this really cool idea in my head for how it was going to look. I was going to, like, color the bears with the same shapes I'd drawn them with, and I couldn't get it to work out quite how I wanted it to. Now we're moving on to this year's April drawing, and fun fact, I'd actually planned to film this video back in March, so that way I could have gone over the last few years of April drawing and sort of promoted the challenge to anyone else who wanted to do it, but I didn't do that because I wasn't sure if I was going to do April drawing this year or if it was even going to happen. It did end up happening, and so I threw this sketch together really quickly because I didn't decide until the last minute that I was going to join. So this is Betty. Then for the next day I decided to draw my OCs, Marina and Susie, just enjoying hot cocoa because it was super, like, so cold that day, and the theme for the day was draw something springy because the season is spring and it's all warm and happy, and I was like, no it's not, I live in Canada, so I'm gonna draw my OCs being cold. And now moving on to, I think, the first day where I just sort of gave up and did a random doodle, because the theme for this day had been character interaction, but because I'd drawn that picture with Susie and Marina interacting before, I wanted to do something a little more complex with more interaction going on. But I apparently don't know how humans work, and it just didn't turn out right, so I got angry and I just did a 5 minutes scribbling out. But for this one, the theme was colors, and I love coloring, so I was like, yeah, let's do that. And so I did a color palette challenge based off of the first thing I saw on my dashboard, and the first thing I saw on my dashboard was a recipe for fried eggs. So it's like, okay, let's make this work. And you know how sometimes when you're drawing, you'll listen to an album or watch a show or something, and then whenever you see the picture, it reminds you of the album you were listening to? I was listening to Pink Day by Filthy Frank while I was working on this, and the song Dora the Explorer came on, and I realized my character sort of looks like Dora the Explorer, and now whenever I look at this picture, I just have Dora the Explorer playing through my head, and I know I did this myself. And then I had a headache when I got home from work, so I was like, let's just do a traditional art sketch, because then we don't have to look at a computer screen. And so I saw this girl at work who she had this cool shirt where like the sleeves were just connected by the wristband and it like flowed all cool and everything. And I was also drinking a smoothie while I was drawing the picture, so I was like, let's draw a girl wearing that shirt drinking a smoothie. And then I almost followed the theme for this day, but not quite, because the theme was to draw on post-it notes, and I claimed I didn't have any to draw on, so that's why I didn't do that. But really, I just don't like drawing on post-it notes. Like, I don't know if it's just the pack I have or just post-it notes in general, but it's just such an unpleasant paper to draw on. But I did have some packaging from some Reese's peanut butter cups I'd eaten, and that paper is so much fun to draw on. I used to do doodles on it like all the time. So I did a little doodle on that. There used to be this artist who I used to follow on DeviantArt. I don't know if I follow them anymore, but she'd do like these really itty-bitty tiny character doodles on little itty-bitty tiny pieces of paper and then compare them to the size of a coin. So I was sort of trying to imitate that. And I wanted to use a quarter, but I'm broke, so I had to use a nickel instead. And then this one I did on one of my weekends. And fun little story behind this, I'd initially just planned to do a really quick messy sketch. And so I did this sketch and I was like, no, let's put color on it. So I put color on it. And then I was like, you know what? I saw this cool painting method where you merge all the layers together and then you paint over top of that so that way you can have a smoother look. It's like, yeah, let's do that. But before I did that, I done all the stripes for the suit and then I merged the layers and I was like, oh, how am I supposed to shade the suit? Because I had some messy sort of type shading, but like I had to like awkwardly clean it up by like stroking along with like lines of Poppy's outfit. By the way, this is Poppy, if you guys don't know, from Poppy the Performer. That suit just took so long to shade because your girl Melody doesn't have the forethought to think, maybe we should do the lines after we do the shading. And then I drew another Poppy, which just because, like, I was sketching Poppy a lot at the time, and I didn't have plans to really post this or work on this anymore because it was just a sketch at the time, but then the theme for the day was fandom, and I was like, I have a sketch of Poppy, let's just post another picture of Poppy. This day's theme was backgrounds, which is one of the things that I know I really need to improve on, and so I just sort of made up this little background. And fun story behind this is based off of a sitting room in my grandma's house. It's not like entirely based off of it because the entire orientation of the room was really different, but I remember I used to like sit in there and I would read, and next to me was this big bookshelf of my grandma's books, and at the time it's like, oh, those all have weird titles about like Scotsmen. Why does my grandma have so many books about Scotsmen? And I've since found out most of those books were smut. I was just sitting next to this giant bookshelf of smut. It's like, oh, that's interesting. And I decided not to focus on the smut part of the reading room, but instead the plants, because my grandma's house had a lot of plants in it. And then another character expression day, because I had done Tosh the first year and Lou the second year, I decided to do the other character in their trifecta. This is Lysander Wallace, or Lex. Lex is a character who I've just struggled for so long to get a proper character design down with, just because, like, I feel like he's a little more basic design-wise than Lou or Tosh are, and so he's a little less fun to draw. But I did try with this. I did the same method I did with Lou, where I threw down some color and then did line art over top and sort of added shading to make it a little more exciting. And this day I was super busy, as I say in the description, because I had to cover my sister's room with pictures of Nicolas Cage. So I just did a quick little deer doodle, and marker. This was when I was preparing for my MS Paint Pro video, and so I wanted to do a quick MS Paint drawing, and I didn't really like how this picture turned out, but I had to post something. I decided since I posted this and it wasn't great, I'd post a work in progress shot of Pearl instead, because, and then there was a left-handed versus right-handed challenge again, and I was like, I'm going to show up my past self and make it even better, and I'm going to do it entirely in ink. And so I used my brush pen for the lines and then did an ink wash over top of it. And I like how this one turned out a lot. I think it's super cool. And on this one, I'm not great at my brush pen with my right hand. I'm also very, very much not good at my brush pen with my left hand. It was another mythical creature day, and I drew a minotaur. I had initially thought about doing something a little more like feminine, like an angel or like a mermaid. I feel like I always go to more like girly or feminine type characters, that I wanted to draw something a little more masculine, and he was supposed to have this super tough pose where he was like, you know, flexing with like his arms together, but it just sort of ended up looking like his arms were on his hips, so I decided to just roll with it. And then if you look down here, this was my initial sketch a while back for when the theme was character interactions, and as you can see, it doesn't look good. I tried so hard and it just looks so unnatural. So I decided to go back again for this day. I think the theme of the day was something on the lines of like draw this again or something, I'm not sure. But I decided to go back and redo the image. And so I used reference images this time, and it's my OC's Lex and Lou again. I like how it turns out, although I feel like Lou just looks super tiny, and part of that's the pose, and part of that's because Lex is very big and Lou is very tiny. Still, he's just like, just a small little Lou compared to a giant Lex. And then the theme for this day was birds, and so I drew birds, and I planned to do something a bit more elegant and pretty. But I was watching my little brother at the time, and he kept, like, bumping my hand and, like, trying to grab my markers while I was drawing. So I decided to just let him help me with the work. And so whenever he bumped my hand, I'd be like, okay, I just gotta go with that line. So, like, for example, I think this bird, it was originally just supposed to be, like, a bean-shaped bird. But then my hand went up here, and I was like, well, looks like it's got a head now. And then another work in progress, because I'm not good at finishing artwork. And so this was when I was doing the challenge of the month piece, the traditional drawing, and this was the traditional portion of that, which and then another work in progress, because I spent a lot of time on this piece, and I have a very limited amount of time to work on art. Like, I only have a couple hours a day. I spent most of the time that I had for art working on this piece instead of doing April drawing, but work in progresses are allowed, so I figured it was good enough. And then a final work in progress. And then I felt bad for posting so many work in progresses that I did 2 prompts in one day. So the first prompt was a style meme, and I wanted to draw Lou because, again, I just really like drawing Lou. So I drew some sort of looks for Lou. I feel like this one's the only one that I actually really like. Like, I feel like with this one, just because of how I did his hair, his forehead looks weird. And also the outfit, he's supposed to be covered in paint, and I couldn't figure out how to, like, make that look natural because Lou's a painter. And then for this one, sometimes when I draw Lou with messy hair, he looks vaguely like, what's the one Game Grump's name? Is it Aaron or is it the other one? I don't know. He looks like one of the Game Grumps, and he's not supposed to. Plus, I feel like this outfit is probably the most Lou outfit of the trio. And then I essentially did like 4 pictures this day, because like I did all 3 of these, and so by the time I got to this one, which was the actual prompt for the day, which was the draw this again meme, my hand was so tired, and so it's a little messy. I understand that I redrew this little witchling, which again you saw in another one of my Sketchbook tours if you want to go back and watch that. That I tried to draw her. She sort of, I figured she was, like, changing her hair color with her wand because, like, her wand's pointed up at her hair. It wasn't supposed to be like that, but that's how her pose ended up looking, so I rolled with it. And then the theme for this one was working with a medium you're not really used to, so my first plan was to do more ink work. I planned to use my ink pen to do the entire outlining and then go over with an ink wash. And I used my Strathmore mixed media paper, which I've had problems with before, but I figured it would work just fine, and it didn't. When I went to do the ink pen, I accidentally smudged my hand at one point down here, and I was like, ugh, it's kind of smudged, but that's fine, we can cover it up. And so, finished it all up, I went to erase my pencil work, and it just smudged the entire thing, and I've never had problems with that pen smudging before, but I just got so frustrated, I was just like, nope, we're gonna do something else. So I did a little watercolor bunny, because I also need to get better at watercolors. Here we have a comic of basically just a daily interaction with my supervisor. and I wanted to try to show like sort of some motion with this comic because it was a bit of a static type interaction, literally just us talking. So I had myself making a sandwich while it was going on. I really only had, I think, 45 minutes this day to do this, so I had to draw the comic very quickly, and I'm proud of myself for pumping out like 4 admittedly sketchy images in 45 minutes. And I remember the theme for this day was just like draw something you like to draw. So I was like, let's draw a pretty girl. I thought about doing a deer, but I'd already done a deer a couple of days back. I was like, you want to know what I don't draw enough of? Pretty girls. And then, wow, look at that, work in progress shots. And I thought about posting another work in progress for this day, but the theme was art for your friends. And I have this one friend on Tumblr named Jack Stuff Up, who's honestly just like the sweetest person in the world. They've done so much art for me too, and they're so nice. And I was like, I need to draw art for them. And so I drew their persona, and they liked it, so that's good. And then this one, I don't remember what the theme for the day was, but I think it was a theme that I just didn't want to do. So I just did a bunch of doodles in my sketchbook. I'd already done these doodles, I think, before I decided to submit them to April Drawing. The theme for this day was hands, and so there's this website called quickpose.com, which basically it'll just show you these images, and it gives you like a time limit, and you draw the picture, and then it shows you another image, and it's a really good resource if you want to do life studies or that sort of thing. And so I did that. They have different options, so you can do full bodies, you can do faces, I think you can do feet and also hands, and obviously I did the hands. And most of these, they look sort of okay just skimming over them, and if you don't see the hand that I was referencing them from, like for example this one, I think it looks really good by itself, but when you see it next to the hand I actually drew, it's like, oh, that's not how that hand worked. And then it was getting towards the end of the challenge, and I realized I hadn't drawn Tosh in the entire challenge. And it's like, what's the point of drawing if I'm not drawing Tosh? And so I did a really quick marker doodle of Tosh. These clouds were made out of Post-it notes because I'd been testing out ink colors up here and it looked kind of bad, and so I just covered it up with a Post-it note cloud. But I also like how it adds to the whole aesthetic of the piece. And then final day, because I started off with a picture of my OC Betty, I closed off with a picture of my OC Betty, and she's just sort of kissing goodbye to the challenge. And that's it for my April drawings. I want to do some more digital type sketchbooks like this, maybe not every month, but maybe like every other month in between traditional sketchbooks, so let me know if you absolutely hate this or if that is something you'd like to see. But yeah, I think daily drawing's a lot of fun, and it's a good thing to sort of see how far you can push yourself, because I know I personally have a lot of days where I'm like, oh, I don't have enough time to make good artwork today, I'm just not going to draw. But like, if you do a daily art challenge like this, where you post it online and so you sort of have an audience to hold you accountable for it, it makes it a little easier to motivate yourself to keep working, in my personal experience. But I don't know, have any of you guys done daily type challenges like this? Have any of you done the April Drawing Challenge? Let me know. Yeah, I guess that's all I really have to say for this video, so thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you next time. Bye!